So this is Christmas.
Is that a song?
For good and for bad. No. Yeah,
this is Christmas.
That's a song. That's a Christmas. I think that might be my favorite Christmas song, actually.
You just make that up? Go on.
That's the John Lennon Christmas song, right?
Give me a few more bars.
So this is Christmas for good and for bad.
Oh,
the old
yes.
and the new ones.
Yes.
The something and the sad. I don't know. Yeah, I'm bad at lyrics. It's a good Christmas song.
That's not a bad one. I've been going through some Christmas albums.
Really?
Recently.
Yeah.
My latest find, discovery, archaeological dig.
Yeah.
Is Christmas by Mannheim Steamroller.
Look, okay. There's a place and time for Mannheim Steamroller, I will tell you.
Is there?
Yeah, the place is there's a house in the back of the valley in Pacifica that does a laser light show synchronized to Mannheim Steamroller, where they project a bunch of stuff on their house.
That's you nailed it.
And you roll up and you tune your radio to 690 AM.
Oh wow.
And you sit in your car and they project a bunch of stuff on their house and they have lights everywhere and it's crazy. It's super good.
Okay, first of all, you completely nailed it. Mannheim Steamroller is the laser light show of Christmas albums.
Oh yeah.
So wait, do they have like an AM transmitter installed somewhere?
They have a small AM transmitter. It's really short range. It's like half a block range.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then every like 10, 15 minutes they start a show, and the show is programmed and synchronized with the music. And like there's a little tree in the front that's like goes with the timpani drums, and it is really cool.
That's wild.
If you want to come check it out, let me know. I can hook you up.
Man, they just have people coming and going all night.
I'm sure their neighbors absolutely fucking hate it because people are just stop in the middle of the road. And they're like, "What the hell is this?" And yeah, it's a little bit of a traffic hazard. But yeah, it stops at like 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock or something like that. If
anybody wants to know what I'm talking about, just hit YouTube and try to pull up "Deck the Halls" by Mannheim Steamroller, and you'll immediately get it is the best of cheesy 80s synthesizers playing Christmas music. Not all of the stuff on there. There are traditional like woodwinds and stuff on that album, but it's a bit synthy.
It is very much like, hey, we can make electronic music now, and we're going to abuse that power a lot.
In the name of Kris Kringle.
We had a Christmas album that I have tracked down multiple times, and I can never remember the name of it. So this is going to be great for everybody listening at home. But it was like a children's Christmas party. It was like a concept album in that there were a bunch of children that came over to somebody's house, or maybe it's the people's children, and they were all singing Christmas carols. But it was recorded in Nashville in like 1978.
Okay.
And all of the children had incredibly thick Tennessee, not just Southern accents, but Tennessee accents.
Oh boy.
And like, it's all bangers, like All I Want for Christmas Is My Two Front Teeth. And it's like there's songs. I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus. I'm logging into Spotify right now to see if I can find it, but I think it's probably, I'll probably have to do some more research.
Lost to the mists of time. Well, just to free associate our way through this cold open to bring it all home.
Yeah.
Speaking of All I Want for Christmas, made popular by Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Wait, really? That was an Alvin and the Chipmunks song originally?
Well, maybe not originally, but didn't they do a version that is very well known?
I'm going to go ahead and tell you, my father did not approve of the Chipmunks nor Alvin.
What? So
we did not have a lot of Alvin and Chipmunks in the house.
Okay, we didn't have it around, but I don't think anybody was ideologically opposed to it or anything. But yes, I've confirmed that is a popular Alvin and the Chipmunks. Anyway, I discovered while editing last week's episode yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Hold down the I key in Audacity.
Oh no!
It fast forwards, and it basically, the more zoomed out you are on the timeline, the faster it plays.
Oh my god!
So every step of zoom out you do, you can hold down I and get an even faster version of us.
Oh my god!
I'm just gonna say, we make great chipmunks.
Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Brad. Did you have your collard greens and black-eyed peas this morning, I hope, as the tradition requires?
Have we talked about that before? I thought that was a universal thing, and then in the last year or two.
But it's not a universal thing?
No.
What?
I guess we haven't talked about it. No, it's like a Southern thing, I think.
Man, I have my own black-eyed peas and collards recipe. I combine them.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's really good. I'll send it to you.
All right, that sounds pretty good.
I'll put it on the shitty blog so that all the people can have it. It is one of a handful of recipes I've invented myself from scratch.
Wow.
Like I took what I knew about food and I was like, if I do these things, I think this will taste good. And then you know what? It tasted good.
I'm finding shitty.blog to be increasingly a misnomer because it seems like you keep putting decidedly not shitty things on shitty.blog.
It's shitty because it's infrequent, because it's like my 17th job at this point. So
okay, sure.
it's not going to look, you can't come there for reliable day in and day out posts. It's like maybe one post a week or maybe two.
Sure. I figured it was shitty because it was slapped together. No offense.
Wow.
Not slapped together, but templated. Like I think you said you just pulled an off the shelf template, right?
Of course. I'm not going to make I don't have the skill. If I could make a blog template that looked better than one you just pull off the shelf, I'd probably be making blog templates for a living.
Do you not have comments enabled?
No, fuck no.
Oh.
Never comments, Brad.
How can people engage with your content?
You know what? I'm fine. They can retweet it. They can tell their friends. That's how they can engage.
This is pretty nice looking. Do you make these? Did you take this photo of the inside of your PC? Is this that you made this banner on this post yourself?
I did that. I did that with Affinity Photo.
Huh.
I've applied all of the lessons that I've learned making content over the years to shitty.blog.
Are these your jars of nog? They must be.
Those are indeed that's the 2021 batch that put me in the hospital.
Okay, that's not one of the jars I have in my fridge.
Well, you had it in your fridge at one point, but not this year.
Okay.
I hope not this year, at least.
What if I just like it really aged?
Look, people do that. People start making nog in July and then let it sit for 6 months and drink it in December. And I don't have the intestinal fortitude to try that, I don't think.
Do you know what's happening chemically, molecularly?
Like it's
over that much time.
I assume there's at least some light fermentation going on in there. I don't know. I don't look, I would, okay. If I was in Nepal and somebody's like, hey man, you want to try some fermented yak milk? I would absolutely go in for that.
Yes.
If somebody's like, hey, do you want to have if when June rolls around and I find a leftover jug of nog in the back of the fridge, I'm going to be honest. I just throw it straight in the trash. I don't even dump it out. I'm just like, I leave that thing sealed up and it's a ticking time bomb for the future.
That jar is forfeit.
Yeah. I assume that this is how like the Egyptians ended up with like mead that people find 2,000 years later. Is somebody got it and they're like, oh man, this has been too long. We shouldn't drink this. And then they just chuck it in the landfill, the Egyptian landfill.
Microbes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeast. All right.
Yeah.
Speaking of
rank projects.
Okay, there you go. That was a way better segue than what I had. Software.
It's time. We're back on our bullshit.
Yes, it's again time for a second week running.
Yeah.
Spanning years. A project spanning years.
Brad, I'm worried that this might be the project of our lifetime. Like, I'm worried that this might be all we do for the remainder of our podcasting careers. Let's
provisionally, let's see what the audience has to say about that. But, if I had to be locked into one podcast topic from now on, talking about the history of software, I think would be pretty tolerable.
That's true.
That would be up there among things I wouldn't mind having to talk about all the time.
Well, okay. So I figure, like, I look at like Leo Laporte, who's still going strong in his mid 70s, right?
Is he
late 60s, early 70s? I don't know. I feel like Leo's a significant amount older than us, but maybe he's only like 10 years and I just haven't seen him in a long time.
66.
Yeah. So I figure I got at least 20 years left. That means he's 20 years older than me.
Oh man.
That means
a
50 episodes a year times 20. That's 1,000 episodes. Right? 1, 2. Yeah. I think we can get through this in the next 1,000 episodes.
Okay. All right. Challenge accepted. We need to figure out where we're going with it this week, though. Yeah. So the story this far, we've made a list. We have 3 rules. The rules are any and all selection criteria are important here. There's a period of adding new entries at any time. Yes.
This is not a popularity contest.
Wait a minute. Hang on. I'm not sure rules 1 and 3 are compatible.
Well, I'm just saying it doesn't have to be a popular. I mean, I think that precludes. I think rule 3 precludes removal due to unpopularity.
Okay. Sure. Yes. Okay. I'm with you.
Right. Like what I'm saying is we can't say, oh, well, because WordStar wasn't very popular compared to WordPress.
Of
we
course.
don't like WordPress wins here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay. Should WordStar go on the list?
Yeah. WordStar should absolutely be on the list. That was my next one. Yeah. Fuck yeah. WordStar was the first word processor.
What? I don't know if I've ever used or even seen WordStar.
You probably haven't, because WordPerfect immediately knocked them off and did a better job marketing.
WordPerfect is how I learned to type.
Yes. I learned to type with Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing.
Really?
I believe so, yes. Actually,
graphical?
You know what? That's not true. I learned to type with the Lambda Moo on shell account in like 19. That's I learned to type playing Quake 1, so I could tell my friends, the people I was playing with, where we were being pushed on Q1 DM3.
That's way more hardcore.
Yeah.
I took I had a high school keyboarding class.
I had to drop the high school keyboarding class because the woman was mean and she was going to give me a B, and I didn't want a B.
A B?
A B.
A B was unacceptable?
I had all A's, Brad.
Wow.
I had one B, and
wow.
Mildred Reeder gave me a B the second semester of my sophomore English class.
Oh, Mildred.
Yeah, well, Mildred was not in good health, but hadn't told anyone. And she was especially hard on the class that year, especially the people that she found to be underperforming their potential.
Wait, you were underperforming your typing potential?
No, this was an English class. So she felt she wanted me to use more flowery adverbs, and I told her I didn't believe in adverbs, and then she gave me a B.
Okay.
That's when I learned taking a stand against power was a futile effort, and that's why anyway. Thanks, Mildred. That's why I ended up going to UT. You're welcome. I hope you're happy.
Butterfly flaps its wings in Singapore. Mildred gives you a B.
Look, ultimately, she probably saved me a good 150 grand. So thanks, Mildred.
The downstream effects of small events are unforeseeable.
Yeah. Mildred Reeder and Ashton Kutcher hosed me. Okay, so
I don't know if you were joking. I put WordStar on the list here.
Fuck yeah, WordStar is on the list.
Interesting. This screenshot of WordStar for DOS kind of looks like Nano for Unixes.
What a weird coincidence. It's like it's almost as if there's an epitome, like a molecular base level of all word processors. Okay, so should we run down the list of what we have right now? This is not in any particular order.
Yes.
This is more or less in the order we put it, except for we moved a couple of things around before we decided to not put it in any particular order. So number 1, we have the Linux kernel. Number 2, Netscape Navigator. Number 3, Super Mario Brothers.
Wait, hang on. Netscape Navigator 2.0. Oh,
sorry. 2.0. Yes. FreeBSD, Notepad, Video Toaster, Steam, the Lamp Stack, Winamp, Music Match, Jukebox, Napster, Nutella, with a G, MIRC, Photoshop, Quake, Super Mario 64, and WordStar.
We didn't talk about MIRC.
We talked about IRC.
We waxed nostalgic about Usenet, and then I briefly said, like, oh, well, if we're talking protocols, then IRC is pretty awesome. And then you put an M on the front, as you should.
That's true.
Because, I mean, if there's one IRC client of record, especially for Windows, it's MIRC. I mean, it's still going.
I mean, it was MIRC, and then the people who were logged in with shell accounts had BitchX, was what my memory was.
Or I think IRC2 is the one I always heard about.
That was later. That would have been way later, though, I think.
Is it?
Yeah, BitchX would have been the mid-90s, probably.
I thought IRC2, I think, is very old.
Oh.
89. Yeah, I think IRC2 is as old as IRC.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Well, no.
Also
IRC
people were
before that.
People were running egg drops and kinds of
crazy bots. If you had a Unix shell account that stayed live when you were logged out, you could do all sorts of evil things in IRC.
Oh,
that's all I knew. And I never had one. I was always jealous.
I absolutely. Like, that might be my first exposure to, like, the world of Unix and thinking Unix is cool. Getting on IRC in the mid 90s from Windows 95 on a PPP dial-up connection and going, wow, these people that get to idle all day in this channel are awesome. This person's running a bot in here. That's cool. Man, I wish I could do that. But boy, would my dad shoot me if I left the phone connected all night. I
had an ISDN line that let me, it was, you had 2 channels, so I could call and be on data at the same time. You'd lose half your bandwidth when somebody called you.
Acceptable trade-off. Man.
Yeah, it was fine. And it meant that I could weather a lot of net splits. Like the stuff that would kick off all the modem people. Dude. It would be me and like 3 people on T1s in the big channels.
I'm telling you, man, like some of the channel wars that happened on IRC around that time.
Oh yeah,
were more fun and more memorable than any video game I have ever played, because it was like a social game. It was like a social technological game. Like I don't know that I can describe the details very effectively at this point because it's been 25 years. But
yeah, but it was
what happen. What would happen is different servers on the same IRC network would kind of lose sync with each other or lose connection
for
and
2 minutes maybe sometimes.
But long enough for there to exist two versions of the same channel on different servers.
Yeah.
And then when they would kind of rejoin each other, essentially whoever joins a channel first on IRC has ops. And ops means you can set the topic, you can kick and ban people, set all the modes, et cetera, et cetera. So like somebody could go and join your channel if it didn't exist on one of these split servers, and then they would have control of the channel when everything kind of synced back up. And like also being in a popular video games channel in the 90s that would get like shit talked on Usenet a lot. We had enemies. Like there were assholes, there were like drive-by assholes who would come in and like scream about how the Saturn ruled and the PlayStation sucked and everybody was an asshole, and then they would get banned, and then they would get pissy because you know how it was just like forums drama. Okay.
Yeah.
You know how people get when they get banned. They hold a grudge.
Yeah, they go jump on Mastodon, and then they complain about Elon Musk being a dick bag, and
right.
It's all downhill from there.
Right. And so you would have people carrying grudges who would then like try to take over your channel. And so channel takeovers and like you literally had to like social engineer sometimes trying to get ops from these people to get your channel back and stuff like that. Okay. It was a wild, exhilarating thing.
So this is a digression, but I feel like a game of Neptune's Pride with a lot of people who are in different time zones is going to give you the same kind of form drama that you had on net splits on early IRC. I ended up being the mod, the admin of, or the I guess the owner of Pound Quake, which was the Let's Talk About Quake channel where John Romero and id guys would occasionally come in and drop tips just as a result of a split for about 6 minutes.
Oh, was that FNet?
FNet, yeah, FNet okay. Pound Quake.
FNet was like, I think arguably the worst IRC network, but I think also the biggest. It was almost certainly the biggest, at least then.
It was enormous. Yeah, they were always, yeah.
It had a lot of technical problems that better networks did not, but yet we continued to use it.
Well, it had technical problems, I think, because it was big and everybody was running it on like servers in the closet. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, fair. There were things it couldn't do that things like Dalnet could, but anyway.
So do we feel like MIRC goes on this list, or do we feel like we put something else there? Because I feel like I think no protocols is a fair.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. I mean, they are kind of technically software, but
look, Brad, when we finish this project, we can always go back and rank the protocols later.
Fair.
Like
okay.
HTTPS number one. That's what I'm saying. That's my prediction.
I don't know about that.
Gopher number two.
Gopher deserves better. Yeah. Let's leave MIRC on here. I mean, compared to the kind of shell command line accounts, it was not as capable.
I usually used my shell account to talk to IRC when I had a PPP connection, but
MIRC is what we had basically. I did look for other clients occasionally. I switched to Zircon for a while.
Oh yeah, Zircon was good.
It started with an X. It was scriptable through. It was TCL.
That makes sense.
Is that what it was?
That sounds right.
That client never got finished. I'm sure nobody cares about this but me.
I think there were a lot of like, hey, here's Windows. Like, because you think about it, by this point there were robust offerings in like the Unix space that were then easily ported over to Linux as Linux was beginning to rise. And a lot of the Windows clients were like, hey, this is my senior project at school. And as soon as they went and got a job at Alta Vista or something, then suddenly the work on the senior project disappeared.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Zircon 1.0 beta 4 in 1997 was the last release. Whoever it was that made this never finished it, but you could, it was a scriptable IRC client through TCL, which pronounced Tickle.
Oh yeah. I love a Tickle,
I guess. Also, what was Alta Vista its own company? I thought it was owned by like Digital or somebody.
Well, DC was Alta Vista, right? Or Lycos. I can't remember. One of those was owned by DC.
Alta Vista, headquartered in Palo Alto, founded in 1995. Yeah, it was owned by Digital, DEC.
So here's a question for you. Is Google software, Brad?
Oh man, what a question. Holy crap.
And I'm not talking like in this context, I'm not talking about Google, the company. I'm talking about
no. Yes,
I'm talking about Google, the search engine.
Yes, I'm 100% picking up what you're putting down. We're talking the experience of going to google.com around the year 2000, 2001. That's hard to refute, actually, because it literally changed the way you used the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, search engines were
search engines were useful tools, but not the end all be all.
That's exactly it. I started to say like search engines were useless before Google, but that's not fair at all. Like they did help, but
well, so before Google, and even in the early days of Google, being good at using search engine was an incredibly powerful skill as a journalist. Like when I started at ours in '98, being good at using Lycos and Metacrawler and the weird search engines that would be like 4 different frames of 4 different search engines. You put one keyword in and it popped up the results on all 4 pages.
Oh, wow.
That was a superpower, right? Like, sure. Like knowing how to use those and extract information and what kind of information to look for on Yahoo, which was all still manual at that point, God. Or Hotspot or whatever. Not hot. What was the one that ended up being owned by Wired? Oddly,
what? I don't know.
Anyway,
hang on. Now I'm looking for a list of old search engines.
Yeah, but the upshot is Google came out and the page maybe I mean the PageRank algorithm is maybe the thing to put here, but the PageRank algorithm, which said basically, hey, it doesn't matter the number of links into a page is a good indicator of its relative worth and popularity. Now, has that held for the last 20 years? Less so every day. Like
yes.
The current validity and value of Google's search spam filtering is basically nil.
Yeah, it's gotten
useless. Almost useless.
Maybe I don't know. Is it accurate to say it's gotten bad, or is it more that people have just learned how to game it so badly that?
Well, okay. So for the first 15 years, they actively worked against. I'm sure they're still actively working against. This is probably just the problem has gotten too complicated for like a finite number of people to defeat an infinite number of people. But like there's a thing that happens now that a specific kind of blog spam is like you search for something and then it's like, what is it about keyword? Do you know the solution to keyword in 2022? And then there's a bunch of nonsense. And then, but it's like weirdly machine generated nonsense that sometimes has the actual information. It's really frustrating.
Those filler pages rarely have any actual information in my experience. They're usually a giant waste of time.
Yeah, but like the problem is usually they have just enough that you get the preview and it has something that looks good in it that doesn't let you differentiate, so they get clicks.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a mix. There's some like if you Google like say a lot of Windows problems, you'll start to recognize there's some sites like How to Geek and Windows Central, and some of those have actual solutions and actual information, but they surface in the middle of all of those. Like god awful dummy pages that have absolutely zero that actually I think are machine generated.
But we've lost the thread here. What is Google software?
This almost feels like cheating, but if I were to write it down, I feel like I would write google.com circa 2001
or like the PageRank 1.0 or something like that. Maybe
like that would be the entry on this list, I guess. And part of that is just because Google is so big and sprawling now, and we're not talking about that. We're talking about what it did for searching the internet in around the turn of the century. Did they publicly use the term PageRank that early? Were they pretty open about like how the algorithm worked, or at least that it existed? I
think PageRank was actually the name of the senior thesis that it was based on.
Oh, I didn't know that it came out of academic anything.
Yeah, they were both at Stanford.
Was that Bren and
Sergey and Larry?
Right. Larry Page, right? Is that his name?
Yeah, it is his name.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry. I just went to the PageRank Wikipedia page to see what they had, and under history, the eigenvalue problem behind PageRank's algorithm was independently rediscovered and reused in many scoring problems in 1895. Edmund Landau. No, we don't need to keep going, but apparently, yes, there's probably a lot of sorting research behind that stuff that goes way back.
They developed PageRank at Stanford in 1996 as part of a research project about a new kind of search engine.
Okay. Yeah, I'm writing google.com at the turn of the century.
Okay.
So that's
I'd
Yes.
slash PageRank that on there because I think PageRank was the thing. Like, obviously, they very quickly became much more to Google than just PageRank, but
Sure.
but PageRank, like the idea that inbound links were more important than anything else was the like that was the big jump.
Sure. Yeah, I put google.com here just because that was the end user experience at the time of typing that into your browser.
That's fair. You got anything else? What are you feeling about? What are you thinking?
I feel like I'm spoiled for choice and like experiencing analysis paralysis now at this point. We whipped through so many good ones last week.
Oh, there's an infinity of good ones left.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, here's one that I don't know if we said this either. We said it either off air or on last week's episode, but I think it's inevitable. FFmpeg.
Yeah, 100%.
Like that. That's
contest.
Pretty hard to deny how foundational that thing is.
Yeah.
And continues to be. And it's pretty old. It's like 20 years old at this point.
It turns out video is important and FFmpeg is important to video and audio compressed in a way that it works over the internets.
I don't know if did they refer to it themselves as the Swiss Army knife of media, or is that something other people have described? But either way, it's absolutely the case.
That is what it is. Yeah.
Not just as a command line utility, which is extremely flexible, although incredibly arcane. But it's very, very powerful once you get your head around it, but also just as a library that is used by endless AV applications.
Yeah, I think that's if you look at FFmpeg isn't it the backbone for Handbrake and a bazillion other things too?
I believe Handbrake, yes. Plex, I believe, like as someone who's been setting up this Linux server, I can sit there and watch the process list as Plex does things, and I'm pretty sure you see FFmpeg processes spawn, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I had that on my list.
Like everything you can think of that does AV uses it in some capacity. Not everything, but a lot.
What about Explorer.exe, Brad?
I think that came up before we started recording. I was like, I'm staring at my desktop trying to think of some other software, and you were like, the desktop is software, and I was like, okay, maybe. Explorer.exe is definitely software. I don't know that I would say it's good software. I have a very love-hate relationship with the Windows graphical shell.
I'm going to say anything that you use as much as you use the Windows graphical shell, you're going to be much more aware of the things it is bad at than the things it is good at.
But I also feel like it is the prime example of the kind of Microsoft legacy cruft model.
Well, that's true.
Like, that's also represented in the fact that the old control panel still exists despite like 5 efforts to purge it.
That is true.
There's a lot of very old stuff that hangs around in Windows at a user experience level. And I feel like a lot of that is represented in the way that the desktop and the shell and Explorer work.
Did we not put Windows 95 on the list?
We kind of mealy mouthed that one where I think you said 16-bit Windows, and then we started going like, well, is Windows 98 included in that? What does that mean?
I think we should have entries for. I mean, honestly, if we're really going to do this thing that we're now almost 2 hours into of the rest of our lives.
Oh boy.
I think we should just put all the versions of Windows on here, and the bad ones will be at the bottom of the list, and the good ones will be at the top of the list.
Well, look, somebody went and did the work for us because we have this list of the top 10 the best Windows ever here. So does that mean Windows 7 has to be on here?
I mean, if but it's transitive by the law of transitive properties, I believe that a list of software, Windows is software.
If we already decided Windows 7 is the best Windows, then if there's a Windows on here, it has to be 7, correct?
So that's the bones of our list. Now we have to decide what's better or worse than Windows 7.
That's right.
That's assuming we feel like the last list was generated with a valid process and is still relevant in 2022.
Yeah, that's fair. But also, you know what? No, like this list is its own list. This list has its own criteria.
Okay.
I think
we're going to get in trouble.
Yes, I know. That list was a lot more just like which Windows is better than which other Windows.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like this is so much more comprehensive and a little more rooted in history that like I could see a Windows 98 outranking a Windows 7 on a list like this.
So here's my question for you then. Is Explorer.e contained within Windows?
Mm-hmm.
because it is a part of the larger package. Like, are we going to pull Notepad? Are we going to pull Explorer.exe? Are we going to pull Task Manager out? Like, if I were making a list right now, I would put the Windows 11 Task Manager at the very bottom of the list, the very worst piece of software of all time. They took
changed?
something that was wonderful and good and made it slow and shitty.
Is it different?
It's the first major redesign since like Windows XP, probably.
Oh, it's not just the same as Windows 10?
No, it is slow.
Because I think the Windows 10 Task Manager is still decent, right?
The Windows 10 Task Manager is a perfect child as far as I'm concerned. The Windows 11 Task Manager is the kind of kid that like lights like huffs gasoline and then lights the fumes on fire to see if they burn.
Man, that's unfortunate. I hadn't I mostly have not upgraded. Well, I can't upgrade Windows 11 on this PC, but like I mostly had not cared about Windows 11 out of inertia, not out of any like principled opposition to upgrading. But that's the first thing I think I've heard about Windows 11 that actually makes me think like, ugh, maybe I don't want it.
I just got the 21 a new update the other day, and it's possible that they fixed the problem, but it used to take a shockingly long time to load on my i9.
Interesting.
It also could be that the new computer is really fast.
Oh, yeah, fair. The person who wrote Task Manager was either tweeting about it or wrote a blog about it or something a year or two ago. Did you see that?
Yeah.
I forget. I wish I could find that. Maybe somebody on the Discord can help me dig it up. Like there are, if I remember, there are things about Task Manager that still exist kind of outside of the standard Windows process model or something like that. Like there are still like safeguards in there or things about the way it's designed that ensure that it can be accessible even in the event of like a catastrophic failure with the rest of the OS.
Yeah, you can launch it without Explorer running and all sorts of crazy stuff. Yeah,
right. Like there's some really interesting stuff. I will say the best thing they ever added to Task Manager is the ability to right click Explorer in the list and just hit restart.
Oh yeah. That one and the ability to jump straight to the file when you have an offending file to see where it is really good. So like you can jump straight to the file location when you right click in a process now.
Oh my God.
The other thing is that they put the startup apps in there.
Yes.
And it's not just the Windows 8 plus Metro apps. It's not just the GDI apps. It's everything.
God.
Which is really nice.
Task Manager, maybe notwithstanding Windows 11, Task Manager is pretty good. I haven't spent a lot of time in the last couple of weeks. It feels better. I did just do a big update on Windows 11, so maybe they fixed the problem. But I'm skeptical. I'm tempted to write Task Manager on this list. Actually, hang on to step back. You had a larger question. Like, yeah, if I understood the question, were you saying like, if we have a whole ass Windows on here, then we shouldn't have things like Explorer and Notepad?
Well, I was just asking the question. I don't know that I have a well-developed feeling about whether, the collective and the whole and the individual parts should be. I feel like probably for a list this expansive and broad, we should allow both.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My guiding principle for making lists and ranking them is that lists are arbitrary nonsense, and therefore we can do whatever the hell we want.
Just think of the BuzzFeed article we're going to get out of this when we're done. Ranking of software, all of it.
That's right. Hey, look, it's entirely possible that Notepad, despite being contained in Windows, is better than Windows itself.
I mean, I think, look, if you want to talk about Notepad as an atomic piece of software, it has been consistently good. Not great, but good. Like it's a solid middle of the road for me.
It does what it says it does, basically, which is maybe more than you can say about other Windows parts.
Well, the asterisk is if the line endings for your file have to be right, or else it does not do what it says it does.
Mm-hmm. Yes, going back and forth between Linux and Windows a lot these days. I have become well acquainted with the DOS to Unix utility that converts the line endings between DOS style and Unix style. Yeah, because like sometimes you'll edit a config file in Windows and then save it out, and then the thing that uses the config can't read it anymore because the line endings are now messed up. Yep. Text encoding is weird.
Yep. You'd think that we could have fixed that when we switched from ASCII to Unicode, but nope. Okay. So we've added so far 4 things to the list so far in the first 37 minutes of this podcast.
Okay.
I feel like we're maintaining the pace we expected. Mm-hmm. What about Pac-Man?
What about Pac-Man? I can't justify this. I don't know if I have a good rationale for this, but I feel like the more games that show up on here, the more resistant I'm going to become to games showing up on here. I don't know if I can explain that, but
like Pac-Man to me is either Pac-Man or maybe Donkey Kong. Like games of that era are probably the first computer software that most people saw.
Okay.
You know, it's the first time somebody interacted with a thing. It was either that or the telephone switching network are the first computers that they interacted with, right?
Sure.
You know, we're talking about a time where a digital pocket computer, a digital calculator was a rarity. And most adding machines were analog still in a lot of cases, or they were a desktop paper tape calculator was a new innovative device at that point.
Hang on. Let's take stock of, the other games on this list already are Super Mario Brothers, the NES version.
Yes.
Quake and Super Mario 64.
Yeah. And I think like, look, realistically, I think Doom is probably, or Doom or Wolfenstein, one or the other, are probably also on this list.
I'm just going to write Doom. I know I talk about Doom and Quake way too much, so I had avoided bringing it up, but I just wrote it down.
I also think that probably Ultima Online or EverQuest or WoW is on this list.
Okay. Let's table the video games for a little bit.
Okay. They're still software, Brad.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I have the best antidote to this problem.
Yeah.
I'm going to type it in here.
Are you making a sub list for games?
I've written down Gorilla.bas.
What is Gorilla.bas?
What?
I'm sorry, sir.
What?
Look, I am.
How?
Everybody has gaps, Brad.
You of all people, you had more access to early or mid-period DOS than I did at this time.
I don't know about Gorilla.bas.
Gorilla.bas is a basic program included with versions of MS-DOS starting at 5.0.
Is it a game?
It was just in there in the install, and yes, because you remember you could write BASIC in DOS, right? DOS came with BASIC.
I did not know that actually.
Wait, really?
No.
QBasic, I believe. This could be wrong. Didn't they like buy QBasic and include it in DOS?
As this was during the $$ period of Microsoft's history, I believe that's possible.
I don't know what the history is, but yes, there was a basic, not compiler. What would you call it? Interpreter. Yeah. You could write and run basic programs in DOS.
That's a trip.
I think it was literally QBasic.exe was the thing. Yes, that's right. Anyway, Gorilla.bas, Gorilla was included with DOS as a kind of sample basic program, but it's also a game that is much like Worms, where two gorillas are standing on a kind of field of skyscrapers, and you enter kind of angles and velocities to throw bananas at each other.
Wow.
To try to hit each other. And I think they would like blow up chunks of building, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. I had no idea.
Very much a rudimentary little Worms clone kind of thing, but it was a free video game.
Yeah.
And it was potentially a gateway to programming for
basic programming.
A lot of people, because you could just open the program and look at it and try to figure out how it worked.
I can get behind. Look, I'm not going to say no to anything at this point. The worst case is it ends up at the bottom of the list. It's as far as I'm concerned, anything we talk about is probably on the list.
Fair.
We're not making a 10. We're not making an arbitrary list. This is the list. Capital T, capital L.
Sure. You should just, here, did I just find it on archive.org?
Of course you did.
I think I did. I really just want to pull up the source file and look at it and see. Here it is. I found it. Dated 1993 on archive.org. I have opened it. I'm opening it.
I like this. This has opened a whole door of other, like, does Hunt the Wumpus land here? What about Oregon Trail? Are we putting, the math blasters, the bangers of edutainment from the mid 80s and early 90s on here?
I just said I wasn't going to let this devolve into a list of video games, and now here we go. I'm very tempted to type Oregon Trail.
Does math blasters, does Mavis Beacon or Carmen Sandiego, do they have a place on this list?
Hang on.
Yes, hello.
Mavis.
I didn't have a voice module in my computer when I was playing Mavis Beacon, so I don't know.
I didn't either. I always thought it was Mavis Beacon.
Look, I'm not here to judge pronunciations. I'm just here to judge the relative validity of software against other software.
Oh man, I'm looking at the source for Gorilla.bas as we speak.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever thought in the day to open the source file and look through it. I don't think I didn't really have much of a concept of source code at the age of 13 or whatever.
It's really funny because I did a ton of that when I was in like third, fourth, fifth grades when I was using the Apple II or the TIs at school. And then by the time I got a PC, it didn't occur to me.
Yeah. There were too many games.
Well, we had in those early days, there were a lot of books that you would get that were like, hey, solve a mystery by writing a software program. And you could either write the program yourself or you could copy it out of the back of the book if you didn't understand how to write the software yourself.
Oh, yes. Yes. That era is well known and somewhat romanticized, I think, for good reason.
It was a good time.
Yeah. That stuff's cool. Okay. You got anything that's not a video game?
Yeah. What about CorelDRAW?
CorelDRAW, man, that's a name I haven't heard in a very long time.
Still a shipping piece of software today.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
CorelDRAW was one of the early vector drawing apps. It was the vector equivalent to Photoshop. But the neat thing about CorelDRAW was because it was for vector and layout, you could say, okay, I have a dye sublimation. My early exposure to CorelDRAW was my parents bought a dye sublimation printer for their business that you could print like high temperature heat transfer 4-color on, and then make custom printed t-shirts with computer generated designs.
Huh. Okay.
So people would send us their art and we would lay it out and we would crop it and put borders around it, all that stuff in Photoshop, and then lay it out in CorelDRAW so it was the right size and print it out on a dye sub print so you could do iron-ons like they were good iron-ons. They held up really well.
Okay. Interesting. I heard the name CorelDRAW back in the day, but I had no idea what it was. So
it was the dawn of print on demand for us.
Okay.
But as a tool, it also came with an enormous clip art library. So like it's kind of the successor to Print Shop Pro in a lot of ways. It was a more expensive piece of software and designed for professionals, not like printing school banners and stuff like that.
Do you mean Paint Shop Pro?
No, I mean Print Shop Pro.
Print Shop.
So Print Shop Pro. Oh boy, here we go. Okay, these should both be on the list. Probably Print Shop Pro.
Do you mean the Print Shop Professional by Broderbund?
Yes, it was a printing app for like Apple II era computers and on some DOS stuff too, probably. And what you could do with it is if you had a dot matrix printer, you could print banners that were as long as your piece of dot matrix printer paper was. Because dot matrix printers were folded stacks where the top end was connected to the bottom end of the previous sheet. Okay, basically,
yes. You're giving me severe flashbacks to like public grade school library. Yeah. Giant dot matrix banners of perforated paper hung in the library. Reading corner. You'd
peel the printed the tracks. The dot matrix had holes on the edges of the printouts,
or maybe you wouldn't. Depending on your style.
Depending on how fastidious your librarian was.
The little punch hole tracks are kind of part of the charm to me of those big banners.
Oh, see, Mrs. Burnett always pulled the punch hole tracks off. But yeah, so you could make big, long, arbitrary length banners with that, and it had a bunch of clip art and stuff like that in it. CorelDRAW was the professional later on version of that concept. But it was also one of the first things that came with the CD, and it had CDs with literally thousands of vector images. So if you search for CorelDRAW clip art and search for like 1995, you'll find an archive.org link with CDs full of clip art, and they are exceptional. They're very, very good.
What happened to this Twitter bot? Did they purge their account? Oh man. I've been following a 90s clip art Twitter bot for a while, and you just made me go look at it. And sure enough, it is a Corel Gallery 1994. They had a CD. This bot just took a CD of Corel clip art from the 90s and just tweets out like 3 of them a day or whatever. But it looks like they may have just purged all their tweets.
I just sent you.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Weird. They're not showing up under tweets. They show up under replies, even though they don't appear to be. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm rambling here. But
I just sent you a link to a 1998 version of the same thing that has 140,000 vector clip art images in it.
Well, maybe I need to make a Twitter bot then, because this one appears to be fallow, and
Why don't you make a Mastodon bot?
The world needs this clip art. Okay, so all right, let's take a pause here. CorelDRAW. I
think CorelDRAW goes on the list.
I've written down here. I'm actually on broderbund.com looking at the Print Shop Professional 6.4. I didn't know that. Broderbund.
Broderbund is what I always said, but I have no idea.
I always said Broderbund back in the day, but I thought that was wrong. Anyway, I didn't know
I often made soft vowel sounds hard.
Mm-hmm.
So
fair or long.
Yeah, I don't want to. We don't need to get into it.
All right. Broderbund owned by Encore Software now, apparently, but they still exist.
Yeah,
they still exist as a brand. They also made.
I'm shocked.
Mavis Beacon teaches typing.
They made a lot of. I feel like Broderbund also made like After Dark, the screensaver with the toasters.
Did they? I thought that was Berkeley Systems, wasn't it?
I think they bought Berkeley Systems eventually.
After Dark was made by Berkeley Systems, which was acquired by, I don't know. Oh, Sierra.
There you go.
Sierra bought Berkeley.
So does Print Shop make the list?
I have zero experience or affinity for it. So you tell me. CorelDRAW sounds maybe a little more important here. I kind of want to talk about Paint Shop Pro.
We can I think Paint Shop Pro is also a valid entry for the list.
Paint Shop Pro was the first, I don't even know if I could call it a Photoshop competitor because it was vastly more limited. But it was crucially, I hope I'm not getting myself in trouble here. I think it was free, or at least there was a freeware version or a kind of unlimited trial version.
There was a trial version, I believe.
I think is what it was. Anyway, it was like the first thing I remember that you could download that could do even a little bit of basic image editing.
Yeah, that seems right.
For free.
Well, Paint, which was built into Windows.
Yeah, but this was more like Photoshop Lite of you can resize images, you can do some scaling and some more basic or more advanced image editing. Not just Paint's kind of click your mouse and drag around and make scribbles, at least in that era.
Yeah, at some point around, I think the Windows 7 timeframe, Paint got more capable and you could resize images and change formats and stuff. But
Paint has gotten way better. If people didn't use Paint in the early Windows days, it was basically a thing for making scribbles.
Well, you could make a circle.
Shapes.
You could put a circle around a part of an image you wanted people to look at.
You could make some primitive shapes or whatever. Yeah. But I don't know if I'd put Paint Shop Pro on here. There's a lot of heavy hitters here.
I feel like I'd put GIMP or something else ahead of Paint Shop Pro, maybe.
I don't know. I tried to use GIMP for a year or two recently, and then eventually bought Affinity Photo instead.
Affinity Photo is pretty good.
It's pretty good.
It feels too new though.
Corel, just real quick before we move on, Corel still exists.
Corel was bought. Corel was one of those companies that never made enough money to not be bought by a billion other people and got transferred from company to company until it's owned probably by some holding company or something now.
They're not called Corel anymore. They actually just rebranded this year. They are now called Aludu.
It's a terrible name.
They are owned by something called Kohlberg Kravis Roberts.
Yeah, holding company.
An American global investment company.
Great. Good job.
Wow, you should pull up this picture of their headquarters.
Is it just a generic looking office park?
No, that might be the most evil looking skyscraper I have ever seen. It looks like it's made to kill people.
Well, there we have show art. Is it the Batman Tower in Nashville?
It looks like it has a giant spike coming out of the top. Ugh. It has 3 spikes. It looks like it's made for cutting things.
Is there an Eye of Sauron up there?
I don't know. Pull up Corel on Wikipedia and then click their corporate owner and you'll find what I'm talking about. Anyway.
What about Lotus 123, Brad? The turtle.
How about Logo Writer if we're talking turtles?
Logo Writer might be the right one here. Lotus 123 was the first spreadsheet though.
Oh, was it the literal first? I feel like
it was the first consumer one.
We're getting hot and heavy into some 90s productivity software.
I think this is actually 80s.
Is it really? So Lotus is an interesting one. Is 123 their original claim to fame? Because later, there was Lotus Notes and some other stuff like that.
Lotus 123 was the first killer application for the IBM PC, according to Wikipedia. It significantly contributed to the success of IBM PC compatibles in the business market. The first spreadsheet was VisiCalc, which helped launch the Apple II. But IBM, there wasn't a version of VisiCalc. This is a story we'll hear a lot as we talk about this stuff. VisiCalc did not release an IBM PC version fast enough. And then they launched a straight port of their existing system, despite the fact that the IBM PC was a dramatically more capable computer than the Apple II. And Lotus marketed a 3-in-1 integrated solution with spreadsheet calculations, database functionality, and that was the beginning of people using spreadsheets as databases. Jesus, this should be fired into the sun for and graphical charts, which was why it was 1, 2, 3. So spreadsheets, database, and graphical charts.
Oh wow, that did a lot. Okay, yeah. So that was their first piece of software.
I do not know that it was their first piece of software, but I think it was
because I remember. I mean, is Lotus defunct? Yes, it is. But I remember
Lotus was bought by IBM.
Okay. So like later on, I remember Lotus had a whole giant suite that kind of competed with stuff like Office, right? There was like Lotus Notes and what else we have? Lotus Symphony, Lotus Magellan, Lotus Domino.
So Domino
Lotus Agenda.
My first job out of college was as a Domino/Notes admin.
Really?
And Notes was oddly ahead of its time in a weird way. Like the computers weren't fast enough to do what they were trying to do with Notes. Ray Ozzie was the person who drove that whole thing, and it was like groupware in the same way that like Microsoft's OneDrive / Outlook / Teams / OneNote / Word and shared Word. Like Notes was a shared database application where anybody could write into any field of the database at any time. And also document files and spreadsheets were database entries. So that
does sound wildly ahead of its time for something that debuted in 1989.
Yeah. The problem was everything was really, really slow because the computers were nowhere near but neither the computers nor the network connections were fast enough. But like I was able to copy my Lotus Notes file that had all of my email and all of my documents and all that stuff and sync it across my ISDN connection when I was at home or at work. And it was super, like it worked super well.
Wow.
Right up until the point that it didn't. And then it was impossible to fix.
Well, in later years, was Notes a competitor or something like Office or?
I mean, that's what it started out as a competitor to Office. That was their like, their bet was that thin clients, they kind of bet on thin clients, except for they wrote a client software that was really, really heavy.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Let me rephrase the question. Like would you have worked at, say, a Notes company or an Outlook company? You know what I mean? Like it was the email backend that your company used, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Email and document sharing, frankly.
Right. Later on, I remember having friends who worked at companies that were a Lotus Notes company and complaining about it. But I would say the same thing about Outlook.
Yeah, like the real kiss of death about Note, and this was before Outlook was. Exchange Server was new. Exchange Server was there. It was Microsoft's response to Notes and Domino.
Okay.
Like Domino was a server. The problem, fundamentally, the problem was like this was in the time of like a Pentium 200 being a pretty fast computer, and the problem was the server was heavy and the client was heavy. So if you bought cheap computers for your people, then their experience getting email and all that stuff was going to be really slow. And also the email client was fucking terrible.
Okay.
Like just really, really bad. So I don't think Domino and Notes, as much as I have I took that job despite it being an admin role for Domino and Notes. Like I was excited about doing the help desk work and learning about computers and IT stuff and all that. The Notes and Domino was a choice that the people that were there before me had made that I thought was pretty foolish at the time.
Okay. I wrote down Lotus 1, 2, 3. You made a pretty good case for that.
Yeah, I think anytime we're talking about the killer app for the thing that birthed the modern PC I think that's a fair criteria. I also think that maybe stuff like, does ACT go on this list, right?
I don't even know what that is.
ACT was the first contact manager. It was a sales tool. It was revolutionary in that it replaced everybody's paper. It was the first thing that I remember that you would put, like people literally, like one of my early jobs was typing people's Rolodexes into their ACT databases so that they could, because in addition to saving phone numbers and addresses and stuff like that, it also would let you set reminders to say, hey, call Steve back in 3 months, because that's when he said to call him back. And also we talked about how his kids were doing in school, and it was like the thing that people who were good at sales did it made easier for everyone.
Huh.
Yeah.
That sounds reasonably significant. Let me swerve here a little bit.
Okay.
I've got one.
Yeah, well, let's have it.
What do you think about WinZip?
Well, you just typed WinZ on my screen, so I'm going to disallow it based on that.
I think the Google Doc maybe just hasn't caught up yet.
Oh, boy. That is not how you get in the list, Google Docs. You think WinZip, really?
Maybe a little torn myself. I don't know. I mean, look, WinZip was a critical piece of software for a long time, right?
Yeah,
for a lot of people, that was the only way you could unzip.
I mean, for noobs, well, over here we were using WinRAR or
if you're on BBSs and could handle the DOS prompt PK unzip.
Yeah, that's where the pros were.
Or pkunzip, as my friend referred to it back in the day.
No, that's not okay.
I had my friend. I could never quite tell if he was serious or not.
That's got to be, he had to be messing with you. I think WinZip's probably on the list. WinZip was also one of the first pieces of shareware I remember, where you had like the little thing that popped up with the dark pattern button that changed which one was the cancel and which one was the agree you waited long enough.
I didn't know it was that insidious.
Well, it wasn't insidious. They just thought they were being clever because they didn't want you to be able to automatically click on the same agree button after an arbitrary period of seconds, which was their move.
Fair. WinZip was also the thing that caused me to become aware of key generators.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
There were certainly a lot of WinZip key generators floating around at a time.
That was a really good way to infect your computer back in the day, too.
Yes. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun when I a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, something after I built the NAS and realized like, oh, wow, I've got most of the data I've ever owned on this one thing now. Running Windows Defender on all of that.
Oh, God.
Was a little eye-opening.
At least the viruses were old and easy to manage.
Oh, yeah.
By that point.
Yeah. And it's not like I was running any of those things, but it was just like, oh, this whatever this old nameless Windows like shell modification program to make it look like Mac OS is. That sure was filthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like stuff that I haven't run in 20 years or whatever, but it was fun to see the 6 or 8 or 10 things pop up that were like, ugh. Anyway.
It was only 10. I mean, if you only had 10, you did pretty well.
Yeah, maybe a dozen at most, I think, in a couple million files.
I think I only had one real bad virus outbreak that I remember.
So where you were actually infected? I don't know that I don't remember ever actually being like visibly infected.
That's the problem, Brad.
Yeah, but like, what were they doing though? Like, at some level, what is the net effect of having a virus if you never actually notice?
In the word macro virus days, it was just that every time you gave somebody another file, you would infect them. But it probably didn't matter because most people when I was in college, I had to print all my homework and turn it in. So it wasn't like. It wasn't like my word being horribly infected impacted anyone because I never transferred a file to them. They were just, I was the dead end.
What was that virus doing locally? Like what actions was it taking on your machine?
It was literally just infecting every other Word document that you saved with macros that would then infect every other Word document that you saved. It wasn't like there were payloads like there are today.
That's what I mean. It's not like it didn't actually like sabotage anything once it got there.
And it didn't like add you to a botnet or like botnets didn't exist at that point. So,
right.
What I think, I feel like we're at a pretty good stopping point here.
You think so?
I mean, we've added, today we added WordStar, Google.com at the turn of the century / PageRank, FFmpeg, Explorer.exe, Doom, Gorilla.bas, CorelDRAW, the Print Shop Professional, Lotus123, WinZip. Oh, you're highlighting Print Shop Professional. Don't you dare.
I don't really.
Oh, that is.
I feel like there's so much overlap between CorelDRAW and Print Shop Professional. I don't know if I can see them both
a decade later. Okay, one is a precursor to the. I mean, look, if you include Windows 3.1 and Windows 2000, then yes.
I see. All right. Well, maybe we'll revisit that topic. But
oh boy, here it goes.
Yeah,
this is when this gets nasty. I think. I was hoping we would have an ordered list out of this episode today, but I think that was wildly optimistic.
I think right around the time that you started describing this as the project of our lives, any urgency evaporated to get it done.
We did add a new rule today too. No protocols.
Nope. Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Yes. Okay, fine.
Look.
I love protocols, but
2024 ranking of protocols.
okay, fine. Man, I feel like if I could come up with one other banger before we go, I would feel very good about it.
Okay, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
What about Quark Express?
All right, that might be one too many 90s productivity software.
This is the software that created desktop publishing for all intents and purposes.
Kind of still. Hang on. Okay, let's take. Okay, I'll find out.
Newspapers, magazines, every piece of printed material you read for probably 10 years was laid out in Quark Express.
Okay, I'm going to write down Quark Express. It is not the banger I had in mind, though.
Okay, what else you got?
We need something. We need something out of left field.
Oh, okay.
Something to make people go.
iOS.
Oh, that was. See, I had been thinking about that. I had periodically thought to myself, are we going to put a phone OS on here, or are we going to put the App Store on here? Something from a phone has to show up at some point. What about
Next OS?
Oh, wow. Next Step?
Next Step.
Oh, man. Huh. Okay, so this is the kind of creative thinking that I desire, that I crave. Man, that's yes. Next Step, for people who don't know, is the operating system that ran on the Next machines that Steve Jobs went and made. Obviously, he didn't make the computers. Next is the company he founded when he got booted out of Apple.
And then sold back to Apple when he got brought back into Apple.
So crucially, Next Step formed the basis of Mac OS X. Mac OS X literally is just Next Step ported to power PCs and Macs and rebranded and reskinned. There's more to it.
Rebuilt over a period of 10 years.
There's more to it, of course.
Yeah.
Like I'm being very reductive, but in the early days, they literally just ported Next Step to PowerPC.
OS X 1.0, the first release, is like a reskinned version of Next Step's backend, which is based on BSD, which is.
But, I mean, there are still to this day modern system calls in Mac OS that start with NS. No
doubt.
It is as foundational to current Mac technology as you can get.
It is to current OS X and iOS as DOS is to Windows.
I am. Let me get my branding right real quick, because they did change some stuff. I think they partially rename it when they ported it to x86, because eventually Next stopped making hardware, but they also started porting their OS to like x86 because they were not doing well as a hardware company.
B did that.
No, Next also did.
Oh, Next did it too?
Yes, there are x86 builds of Next Step out there that you can get. Okay, it was always Next Step. That is absolutely something that needs to be on here, because we haven't even gotten to the part where, I mean, we've mentioned this on other episodes, the part where the World Wide Web was developed on this operating system.
Oh, right. Because Tim Berners-Lee had a Next machine that he thought was cool.
That was his workstation that he created. Web.
Didn't Carmack do? Carmack did a lot of work on Next machines and SGI machines, right?
Doom and Quake were also created on Next machines in Next Step. Like, that operating system is quietly about as influential as it gets. I
don't think like that work happened. I don't think that work would have not happened without Next machines.
No, you're right. But the people who were doing work on those machines back then, like, just raved, and like you'll still see them talk very lovingly about like how amazing it was to do work in that thing.
Yeah. Are those emulatable at this point? Can we set up a Next emulator and run Next OS and experience that?
You can install and run any of those in 86 box.
I never had a ton of experience with Next machines. I did a lot of SGI machines back then.
I have a folder sitting here on my desktop right now with, let's see, I've got install media for BOS 4.5 and 5.0.
4.5 was a good release for BOS. That's when I started at ours.
I've got OS2 Warp 3 and 4.
Oof, those are dogs.
I've got. This might be the thing I was trying to think of. I think they may have rebranded Next Step to OpenStep when they started porting it to other architectures.
That makes sense.
I think. I don't know. I've got install media here for both Next Step 3.2 and OpenStep 4.2.
Huh.
Anyway, exotic old operating systems. There are ways to run them now, and we should.
This is exciting. I didn't know that. If we did streams, I would load up old OSs and just noodle with old OSs.
That's exactly the thing I was just trying to think of a way to say without in a non-binding fashion.
Yeah.
Next Step is a good deep pull that absolutely should be on here.
I've got one more swerve for you.
All right.
What about Raspbian/Raspberry Pi OS? Now, hold on. You're making the bad noise, but I'm going to tell you why. Let me make my case.
Uses it a lot. I don't know.
Here's the thing that it did. It paired with a piece of widely available hardware.
Yeah.
And it turned a general purpose computer into single serve devices that can become essentially software wedges that have a basis in hardware.
I'm going to write maybe Raspberry Pi OS here.
Oh boy. Maybe.
Haven't gotten very deep. I mean, it's just Debian with some extra Pi stuff added in.
Like isn't Windows 95 just DOS with some extra graphical stuff added in?
I guess. I don't know. I wrote it down. Wrote it down. But it's,
Wow, I thought that was gonna shake you to the core like the Next did. We'll put BOS on next week, but
oh boy. Now we're just getting into ranking of operating systems.
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, isn't that what it's all about?
Yes. I'm gonna suggest maybe we take a break. We need to do questions.
Oh yeah. We're definitely not doing this next week.
I think we're already a week late on questions, so I think next week will be a questions episode.
Next week we should do questions. So if you have questions, you can send them to techpod@content.town, or you can, if you're in the Discord, if you're one of our wonderful patrons, you can jump into the question seeking answers channel and just shout them into the void. You'll post them, they'll disappear, and then we'll see them. They'll show up in our inboxes.
That's how that works.
Where we convert Q's into A's as we do. Well, we're a week late this month, but usually every month. We would love to know what you think about the work of ages that Brad and I are embarking on right now. If you think this is a really stupid idea or a really great idea, please let us know. Because
this questionable endeavor.
Yeah, your feedback is the only way we know if you like the things that we do with the show. I hope everybody had a wonderful new year, a safe and prosperous new year, and a good holiday season.
Happy 2023.
Yeah. Brad, this is the part of the show where we thank our patrons.
Yeah. Thank you, patrons.
Thank you, patrons. As always, we like to thank our executive producer tier patrons, including Nick Johnston, Paddle Creek Games makers of Fractured Veil, Andrew Slosky, Bunny Thorpe Stay Healthy Crimes, Just Wedge, Joel Krauska, Twinkie says Happy Holidays, and James Kamek. Thank you all so much.
Yes.
And if you would like to find out how to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/techpod. Again, that's patreon.com/techpod. And for at least, it may actually be changed by now. We have yet to discuss whether we're going to change it around the new year. Maybe we'll leave it up for today only. The $2 tier might be going away.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should give people a little bit of notice. I mean, I guess we did give them.
We gave them last week. It just seems like there's less time for us, but maybe we'll give one more week, and we're doing this because Patreon's changed the way billing works a little bit, and like our cut of the $2 tier gets smaller every year. It turns out. So yeah, we're going to flip that off. Let's say on January 6th. If you're already on that $2 tier, nothing changes. You stay on the $2 tier for as long as you want. So if you want to get in now at the cheap price, and gain access to the Discord, you can. If you want to get the monthly patron exclusive podcast, where Brad and I talk about a variety of topics. Some might say we ramble.
I'm sure. Yeah,
I feel like sometimes
we dredge up our old Usenet posts.
Yeah, sometimes we talk about more talking about Twitter. I don't know. It's impossible to say what we talk about, but you can do that at the $5 tier and higher. And yeah, we appreciate the support, everybody. Yes. And it's been another wonderful year at the Tech Pod. So thank you all. Thanks for the folks who participate in the Discord. Thanks for the folks who don't participate in the Discord. And we will be back next week with questions. So get those questions in.
We're ready to A some Qs.